what kind of trip makes taking 2 flights, a bus to the coast, a ferry ride to an island, followed by a golf cart taxi worth it? Well, it'd have to be a place that hasn't been spoiled by over-tourism due to the internet age. It had to be a place where you can walk the streets and people wave to you even though they know you're not from there. It had to be a place that would cook your catch after a long day of fishing ends in success. It had to be a place with some crystal clear water and some of the healthiest reefs in the world. It had to be both relaxing one moment and then exhilarating the next. Thankfully, the island of Caye Caulker off the coast of Belize checks all those boxes and exceeded every one of my expectations because, frankly, I didn't have any. Caye Caulker is really that Caribbean dream that everybody hopes for when they step out off the airplane or off their cruise ship, but ultimately are disappointed when what they see. Caye Caulker is filled with the friendliest people I've ever met. There's dirt roads, and you're never too far from an ice-cold pelican or frozen drink. Surrounded by a barrier reef, the island doesn't see the large swell coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, and on the leeward side of the island, the water is crystal clear and as calm as a lake. Though consistently windy while we were there, we didn't mind it because it cooled off the 90-degree weather we had the entire time we were there. We noticed while we were there, everybody walks or rides their bike around, with the exception of a few passing golf carts here and there. And it's far from living in shacks here. The island has all the regular amenities that you would come to expect, but nothing more. The grocery stores are pretty small, and you definitely won't find a Walmart or a chain restaurant anywhere close here. Having only been on one horse before, I'm still a little cautious around these large beasts. Of course, the confidence builds as soon as you get in the saddle, but still learning process. With a combined excursion to go horseback riding followed by cave tubing, we were off in the early morning into the hills of Belize, to a ranch where we could ride horses through the jungle with our guide Elvin and of course the ranch hand that showed us around. We wandered the property atop these beautiful, powerful animals. Everybody got their own and everybody seemed to love it. Starting out slow, we cruised along the path that led our horses to the stream for some water before we headed up into the hills. What started out as an easy trail turned quickly into some rooted and rocky terrain, but the horses obviously had no problem with this, even though I was stressing out from the saddle. All the while, the ranch hand talked about his life, experiences on the ranch, and of course, my favorite thing to ask every time we go to the islands, if they've ever seen snow before. The answer is always no, and it's very funny. During the middle of the conversation, he stopped and turned to our group and asked if we wanted to kick these horses into third gear. All of us said yes, but we really had no idea what we were expected. I had no idea what was about to happen, but all the horses started taking off, kicking into third gear, which is called a canter. There's I thought it was a seemingly blistering pace, but it probably was only 12 to 15 miles an hour. It took most of us by surprise, and we were all in such laughs as soon as we got to the end of the fence line, and we all stopped to regroup. Yeah. Immediately brought a huge smile to everyone's faces, including the ranch hands seeing our reactions. With the tour wrapping up, the horses began to get barn sour. They wanted us off their backs into the nice, cozy stalls where they could get fed again and be relaxing. Because shortly after we turned around, they started transitioning from the walk to the trot to the canter, and for a brief moment, I'm almost positive we were in a full gallop. Whoa, whoa. My horse takes off after Elvin's, Courtney's horse takes after mine. She loses her sunglasses in the process, but it was an absolute blast. This was an amazing experience to learn so much more about this place that we were visiting, but it was mostly a great experience because we got to try to be in sync with these animals as we crossed so much terrain, and mostly when they started riding really fast. After horseback riding, we stopped for a quick lunch before Elvin took us into the Nhoch Caves Branch Archaeological Reserve to go tubing through a river that goes through a cave system, which was an insane thing to say out loud. We hiked upriver where Elvin explained the medicinal purposes of some of the flora we passed by, and we even got to try to eat termites. I know it's very weird, but they taste exactly like pine, so honestly make for a great IPA.
That's the shape of the fruit. Oh yeah.
What do you think?
Wow.
Right?
It does taste like pine.
Once at the top of the trail, we hopped on the tubes as a group, and Elvin pulled us along underneath the limestone mountain and into the cave. Oh yeah, the bats up there. Is that birds up there? Inside the cave, it was complete, total darkness, so we only had our headlamps to illuminate, and that was plenty fine. But as soon as you looked away, it was pitch black.
Limestone again,
Twist.
Horse? Yeah, breaks down. Maybe we have had. Actually, we have.
We did our best to take in as much as we could through the beam of light that the headlamps would give us, but we weren't really experiencing much because we were just in the center of the cave. So that's when Elvin pulled us alongside and took us to his favorite place. It's not slippery. So we hiked up a little limestone waterfall, which surprisingly had such grip to it. To get to his favorite place, we had to swim underneath a very, very claustrophobic set of stalactites, and it was a little eerie, especially if like the headlamps went off. It was complete pitch black, and you're just this far away from the ceiling, which is a very, very stressful few seconds. But then we reached this large pool, the lowest sinkhole to the surface, that you could actually see this massive tree growing, where obviously the earth had caved in. But below it was some crystal clear, perfectly still water in the darkness. And between the darkness and the perfect clarity of water, it made it seem like the ground was only like a foot or two below the waterline. Luckily, it was plenty deep, and it's such an epic detour, so we all started jumping in, and it was an absolute blast. Phew! We hopped back in our tubes and we followed the river out of the cave system. We continued to float past the dense jungle alongside the river. The water was so clear and blue, and honestly it was really warm, so it was very, very enjoyable. Exhausted from the day, between the horseback riding and the cave tubing, we all conked out immediately when we got back in the van. Do feel real bad that Elvin had to drive us the hour back to Belize City without much conversation, but he's a real champion. He was an unbelievable guide. To his words and the quote, it made for an unbelievable day. The routine we found ourselves in every day had us heading north into the town center about a half a mile for most of our meals. And whether the restaurants were on the water or back in the neighborhoods, it was always a spectacular meal. Places like the Lazy Lizard and Sip and Dip were, Caribbean bars you dream about. Getting frozen drinks or beers and sitting in the tables that are perched in the water, unbelievable. And better yet, I think over the entire trip, every night, I'm pretty sure I got fish tacos, and I never once got sick of them. It was delicious every night, and nothing really beats a cold Belican beer pretty much any time of day. Scuba diving is still something that's very exciting every time I get to do it. And of course, I'm still obsessed with seeing large animals, swimming down into view, and getting the chance to be close to them. But it's the little organisms that have really stolen the show for me. Getting the chance to spot some banded shrimp or an arrow crab tucked into some hard coral. Our dive master at the Turnip Atoll was incredible because he was out there showing us all these little bits and bobs, and it was incredible to see all this little life that you just completely pass by. But he was able to come in and say, hey, look at this little thing. Of course, underwater, he's pointing at everything. And it made for a completely different experience than one we've ever had so far, especially earlier in the trip on some of the earlier dives where we were just trying to cruise across the reef and see as much of it as possible. So to be able to go nice and slow and take your time and really just explore everything about one section of a reef that's miles long is a perfect way to see a reef. And I think some of the other divers in our group were starting to realize that too, and they started loving it. We saw it on our surface intervals. But the local reef right off the island and Turnip Atoll were so healthy. There was such an abundance of marine life that flourished here. It was really great to see compared to some of the other places like the Keys that we've seen getting bleached. It was yet another destination where I wish we got to explore more. we had only scratched the surface here. I mean, the 5 dive sites that we got to go to, there's just countless other ones and yet to be discovered. I think we could spend our entire trip on Turnip Atoll and never be disappointed. And plus, we never even got to the Blue Hole. While eating dinner at the Pelican Sunset Bar, we saw an advertisement for the Captain Ron Adventures. After making the obvious jokes about the 90s Kurt Russell movie, we realized the fishing captain was out there cleaning his boat, and so Courtney got his number and we texted later in the week to try to set up a fishing charter to take us out around. The captain and his first mate helped us set up our fishing rods, and we started the day by trolling around to all of his favorite spots. Along the way, he told us that he was like the umpteenth generation Belizean on Caye Caulker, and like every generation has just been dedicated fishermen. And they have such amazing stories and incredible places that he's taken that boat, which wasn't the biggest, and he said he's taken it way out in big seas. But while we were trolling, we started catching some fish, which was super exciting. It was like mackerel-sized snapper, and I think even one barracuda at this point in time. So that was unexpected. Then we got to our next site where we caught a bunch of smaller fish, and we were, I mean, not me, everybody else was pulling them in left and right. I caught a couple, but nothing crazy. But they were all small, mostly bait fish, so we didn't end up keeping any of those. And as the exciting day had to come to an end, we were just heading back and just getting the rods in the water, just trolling away just in case we might catch something. And Jim's rod gets a hit, and so Captain pulls in the other lines, and Jim starts really going away. But this thing is really fighting. He hooked a serious fish. The captain swung the boat around to release some of the tension on the line because it was just overcoming all of the reel's drag right away. And so he came over, tightened it up, and then Jim started fighting it really, really hard, making incremental gains before the fish would just take off again and just, come out yards and more of the line. So they were just back and forth fighting. Even with the sport fishing tackle, the fish barely ever got close to the boat, with the exception of it coming beelining right to the propeller of the motor. So apparently fish are smart enough there, they get hooked enough that they go and try to cut the line that they're hooked on. So the captain is whipping the boat around when he sees the fish, so it was like a full team effort, and I had never seen anything like it. And this must be so common that the captain yelled out that the fish definitely went to Belize University because it was so smart. I had never seen this before in my life. And for the next half an hour, and I mean no exaggeration, Jim fought that fish. Eventually, with both the fish and Jim completely exhausted, he finally was able to reel it in, and it was a large crevalle jack, comically putting the biggest smile on his face that I've ever seen. To make this day even better, the Pelican Bar, where this all started from, cooked our fish 4 different ways, one with the jerk seasoning that was amazing and fried up. It was perfect and a great way to end a day on the water. Okay, to start off, I do not condone chumming the waters to bring in marine life to benefit the tourist. But with that being said, Shark Ray Alley has been a tourist hotspot for the past 20 plus years. My wife had done it back when she was here. Admittedly unsure how I felt about this practice, quickly saw my morals go out the window when I saw about 25 nurse sharks and stingrays just roll up to the side of the boat, and they just told us to hop right in. I was like, okay, that's how this is happening. The captain was chumming the water, and just like dozens of other tourists that day, we hopped in the water with general caution, and we snorkeled around them for about a half an hour. The nurse sharks, closer to catfish than they are sharks, pretty friendly and docile, and you can just swim right up to them, right past them, right through them. But it was the stingrays that really got me nervous. The stingrays would just come straight up to you, and honestly, it seemed like they were wanting to get hand-fed. That's how much. I guess they don't compete with the sharks that well. Honestly, I'd never come close to stingrays in the wild before like that, and the entire time I was thinking of the late global treasure Steve Irwin, and I never really felt comfortable around the stingrays. I'm fine around the sharks, stingrays, no way. And as a charter captain slowly stopped feeding the waters, they all started disappearing, heading to the other boats that pulled up so that they could have that same experience, and we were back in the boat and headed to the island. An interesting experience, I'll be honest. It made for some unbelievable photos and videos and things I'll never forget, because I really hope I never come that close to a bunch of sharks ever again. But it's definitely a very weird practice. Ambergris Caye, a significantly larger island just 10 miles up the coast from Caye Caulker. It was the destination twice of my wife's family about 20 years ago, and they wanted to relive some of the memories they had and see what the once very sleepy island had turned into. After catching the ferry up to San Pedro, Courtney's family was quickly disappointed with what they were witnessing. A place that once closely resembled what Caye Caulker is today now honestly looks like Bangkok. The streets are paved, cars are stuck in traffic jams, there are golf carts everywhere where there used to be just a handful, packed streets, and the electrical lines are running this, that, and the other way. I mean, it is developed and good for them, good for the people, but it's so far from the traditional island vibes that everyone was searching for going there. And though time wasn't favorable to the island vibes that Ambergris Caye once held, it was a great reminder to appreciate the things today, because the only constant in life is change. We were able to find one of the hotels they had stayed in that many years ago and talk with the bartender about their time here and reminisce on the old days. A staple of the Caribbean that I'm starting to realize finally is the wild dogs that roam everywhere. And they seem to be living their best life. The same dogs kept coming up to us and in and out of our lives throughout the week we were there on Caye Caulker. They pop in, walk with you for a bit, even some go for a run with you, which is pretty cool, and then go off to their friends or their resident families. Some will hang out near the restaurants to get a bite to eat because they know tourists like us are going to feed them. Others just, walk away and hang out in the Caribbean sun. But always, and I mean always, they were so friendly and never reactive. I seriously think our dog could learn a thing or two from them. Plus, they're pretty dang cute. Reminiscing on our time in Key West a few years ago and Courtney's family memories of exploring Ambergris Caye via golf cart, we rented a golf cart today to explore the northern half of Caye Caulker. Crossing the split, which is a cut in the reef caused by a hurricane way back in the day, divided Caye Caulker into two halves. This left the northern half completely less developed and great to explore. However, I was probably most nervous about getting the golf cart over to the other side via this makeshift barge on a pontoon boat, but everyone seemed to be doing it, so it worked. And I'll be honest, it was mostly just second homes for a bunch of gringos, but it was really cool to see. But the main goal of this place was to head to the far end to a place called Bliss Beach. It's a beach bar that run by a couple of Frenchmen that resembles more of a day club in the Mediterranean than a Caribbean bar, and it's a perfect way to spend an afternoon once you get up there. So with all that travel, getting there, getting home the reverse way, is Caye Caulker worth it? Yes. I know the family keeps talking about wanting to go back and staying for a month because it was such a great place. There's still so much more diving to be done. I could go back to every single one of those restaurants and have a great time. The food was incredible, and I mean, you could go fishing every day if you really wanted to and have just as big of an adventure. But there's still so much to see and do. The people were amazing, and there's still so many more temples and other things to do on the mainland that you really can't go wrong going here. Whatever you're looking for, Caye Caulker seems to have it.